Hey guys, what's up? It's Greg. For today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I set up a cold hardy cactus garden. I live in US Zone 7B, so it's kind of difficult to find varieties of cactuses that'll survive our cold winters here. We do get a fair bit of snow throughout the winter. I actually was able to order some cold hardy varieties of cactuses online. I spent about $100. It was really expensive for such little small baby cactuses. I have a small side on my house over here that I'm going to be showing you where I plant them. I decided to plant the cactuses on the side of my house where it gets a fair amount of sun during the day. I thought it would be something nice to add some color and variety into my landscape. I was actually inspired by my trip to California to do this garden. Let's get started. This is the section on the side of my house that I decided to plant the cactus garden. It's actually like a retaining wall behind some steps. Whenever I decide to start a new garden, I always like to lay everything out before I plant it, just to get a general idea of what the overall project is going to look like when it's complete. I have this large stone that I decided to be the centerpiece of the garden, and I wanted to plant some cactuses around it and have it be the main focal point. The soil that I decided to use was a 50-50 ratio of all-purpose topsoil and play sand. I had decided to add about a foot of this new soil mixture over our native soil. Our native soil is very dense and it has a lot of clay in it, and it doesn't drain very well. And most cactus varieties need a very well-draining soil because they're used to growing in a dry, arid climate. All of the cactus varieties that I decided to choose actually grow flowers. There's a variety of different colors of flowers, some ranging with pinks and oranges and reds. The types of cactuses that I chose for this garden have a variety of different textures and appearances. I wanted each cactus to have a different focal point and add something different to the garden, so I have some growing in all different types of sizes and shapes. It's a good idea to plan out any garden like this, that way you make sure each plant has enough space to grow once it reaches maturity. It also helps to make sure that you like where everything is placed. That way later on when you actually start planting, you're not going to be ripping the plants out and moving them around and possibly damaging their root systems. Here you can see that I'm moving some of the cactuses around a little bit. That way they're not going to be overlapping each other once they grow. I also decided to plant some succulents and a grass in this garden. They require very similar conditions to grow as the cactuses do, and I thought it would look cool to help make it look a little bit more natural and add more different types of textures. Most of the cactuses I ordered from coldhardycactus.com, and they're sourced in Colorado. The first cactus I'm going to be planting is the horsed spineless tree cholla, I believe it's pronounced. This one's going to be the tallest cactus in the garden, and I thought it would look really nice growing up in the corner against the fence. This one grows bright pink flowers in July, and it's relatively spineless. The spines only grow on the older, thicker stalks of the plant. A couple years down the line, I predict that I might have to transplant or divide up some of these cactuses. I think that they might be competing for space, but they have a lot of time to grow still. For now, while the cactuses are small, I decided to keep the plant labels next to them. That way it's just easier for me to learn and determine which variety is which. Next up was this variegated succulent I bought from Home Depot. I thought it was really pretty with the variegated red leaves that it had, and it already was putting on some babies. This one should make a nice ground cover and will grow up along the sides of the front of the bed. When taking this one out of the pot, I had to loosen up a lot of the extra soil from around the root ball. This way it's a little bit easier for the plant to root into the new soil. I also made sure not to pack the soil too hard around the base of the plant. I wanted the soil to remain loose and drain well. I pressed lightly just enough to remove any air pockets. Next up was the spineless giant Cleric cup cactus. This one was a clumping variety of cactus that blooms scarlet red flowers. The flowers typically come out in June. I decided to plant this cactus up along the front of the bed. That way if anybody brushes into it, you're not going to get pricked. I had to remove more of the soil from the base of the plant because it was actually buried underneath the soil. This could have caused the cactus to rot and die. Next was the baby Rita Apoontia cactus. This one I had to put my gloves back on because it has pretty small microscopic thorns. This one blooms peachy flowers in June. This one's actually a pad style cactus, and as the pads mature, they're going to have a bluish tint to them. The new growth is typically green. One of the reasons I decided to grow this cactus is actually once it starts to get too big for the area, I can harvest the pads and feed them to my sulcata tortoises. If those little dots that have thorns on them ever touch the soil, they could actually grow roots from them. This one still had a little bit too much soil around the base of the plant for my liking though. I originally had a wooden skewer in the pot of this plant to keep it growing upright. However, once it was in the ground, it was no longer needed. Next, I moved on to the middle of the cactus garden where I decided to put this Gurneys Hedgehog cactus next to the rock. This one's a short-growing clumping cactus. This plant is pretty round and it blooms bright orange flowers in June. It was also already growing a little pup, or a baby cactus, next to it. It's called a hedgehog cactus because of all the sharp spines that it has. These spines actually made it pretty difficult to prevent the dirt from sticking to it. I wanted this cactus to fill in up against the base of the rock. I also decided to go and try to remove some of the soil with that wooden skewer from earlier. Next, I moved on to this nice blue fescue grass. I wanted this to grow along the back of the rock. This bushy looking grass stays pretty short and it requires a lot of similar conditions that these cactuses do. When I purchased this plant, I actually found out it was pretty root bound and it was giving me some trouble coming out of the base of the pot. Once I got it out of the pot, I needed to remove some of the excess soil from the base of the plant. I also discovered pretty quickly that it was really overwatered from the nursery. It's a good thing I caught this waterlogging early because it actually could have killed the plant. This grass needs dry conditions to grow. When a plant is root bound, the roots continue to grow into a circle basically at the base of the pot, so I needed to tease and break apart some of these roots, that way they wouldn't continue to grow in this manner. I think the blue blades of grass contrast the rock and the color of the fence nicely. And on the other side of the front of the rock, I decided to plant this hens and chicks succulent. I really liked how purple the leaves were on this one, and it already had plenty of babies growing off of it. Again, I made sure to loosen up some of those roots because this plant was root bound as well. This plant is fun because as it grows, it'll continue to get more and more babies. I can easily break off some of the babies and give them to my friends as gifts. I made sure that the babies weren't just hanging there and they actually had some soil underneath them so they can take root. This one should also fill in nicely along the front of the bed, and it's going to contrast the color of the grass nicely. Here I have another cactus in the Apoontia family, but I'm not sure of its variety. This one's actually a native cactus to my area, and I broke off the pads from a cactus I found at the beach and I rooted them myself. I had to make sure I was wearing gloves again when I was handling this one because this one's really spiny and it has microscopic little hair thorns on them that will get stuck into your skin and dig into you like fiberglass. As the cactus matures, it grows even longer spines. When I found this cactus, it was blooming really beautiful yellow flowers with orange centers, and they bloom throughout the summer. On this end of the bed, I decided to try out a Perry's Hardy agave. Agave is actually what tequila is made out of. This plant is really small and it grows really slow and it still has a lot of growing to do, but it was already putting on some new roots since the last time I potted it up in this red solo cup. I actually decided to experiment a little with this plant. Some people say that it's cold hardy while others disagree. I might have to provide it with some protection during the winter time to prevent it from any frost damage, but I'm hoping that the microclimate against the corner of the fence is going to keep it warmer in the winter. Now all I had to do was a little bit of cleanup. I just decided to go through with a little broom and dust off the edge of this planter. Now I'm just going to come over here and water in everything. I'm not going to water it too much. I'm not going to water it as much as I would with other plants just because they are cactuses and some of them were a little waterlogged like I showed you with the grass. Even though these plants like drier conditions, it was a good idea to come back in at the end and water everything. That way the soil settles in and it'll take out any air pockets. This is a quick overview of the finished product. It looks kind of sad right now given how small everything is. These were all baby cactuses, so they have a lot of growing to do, but hopefully since it's just the beginning of the season now, they're going to do a lot of growing this year, and they're going to fill in this area nicely. The succulents usually grow a little bit quicker than the cactuses do, so hopefully they'll add a little bit more color in here. I like to add a little bit of a color variety scattered all throughout here. This is going to be a really nice centerpiece once everything starts growing in. The grass is going to grow behind the rock. This little hedgehog cactus will clump up and add little mounds around the front of it. And the hens and chicks are going to fill out the front, leaving a nice ground cover with some color. A little worried about what this agave is going to end up doing. This one can be a little finicky in my area. It might need some coverage in the winter. Hopefully there is a nice microclimate over here though with the fence and the wall. And microclimates basically mean that it's going to retain a little bit more warmth over here in the winter because there's some wind barriers. I'm also going to be adding some of that sand soil mixture in between this gap between the fence over here to raise the soil line up. And eventually I'm going to be getting some cold hardy sedum, which is basically a succulent variety that grows flowers and it kind of trails over things. It's almost like a vine cactus. It doesn't climb things, but it likes to spool over. So I think it'll look really pretty to add some variegated ones and have them hang over the edge of this wall over here. That's it with this video, guys. This was my first attempt at growing cactuses. It was cool that I was able to find some cactuses that are going to be able to survive in our climate. I'm from Zone 7, Long Island, New York, so our winters get pretty cold, but they're not as cold as some other parts of the country. Some years we have more mild winters than others where the snow will melt almost the day after it's laid on the ground. And other years it sticks around all winter long. I'll make sure to give you guys updates on this cactus garden as it grows. I might do an end of the summer update just so we can see all the growth throughout the year and the progress that this garden has made. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. I'll try my best to answer them. And if you have any video suggestions you'd like to see, leave those in the comments down below as well. Make sure to click that like button and subscribe to my channel. And make sure you check out my TikTok and my Instagram. They're both @Greg_Bashaw. I'll see you in my next video.